Chapter 1, Part 1 of Principia Ethica. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Fredrik Karlsson. Principia Ethica by G.E. Moore. Chapter 1. The subject matter of ethics. 1. It is very easy to point out some among our everyday judgments with the truth of which ethics is undoubtedly concerned. Whenever we say, so and so is a good man, or that fellow is a villain, whenever we ask, what ought I to do, or is it wrong for me to do like this, whenever we hazard such remarks as temperance is a virtue and drunkenness a vice, it is undoubtedly the business of ethics to discuss such questions and such statements, to argue what is the true answer when we ask what is right to do, and to give reasons for thinking that our statements about the character of persons or the morality of actions are true or false. In the vast majority of cases where we make statements involving any of the terms virtue, vice, duty, right, ought, good, bad, we are making ethical judgments, and if we wish to discuss their truth, we shall be discussing a point of ethics. So much as this is not disputed, but it falls very short of defining the province of ethics. That province may indeed be defined as the whole truth about that which is at the same time common to all such judgments and peculiar to them. But we have still to ask the question, what is it that is thus common and peculiar? And this is a question to which very different answers have been given by ethical philosophers of acknowledged reputation, and none of them, perhaps, completely satisfactory. 2. If we take such examples as those given above, we shall not be far wrong in saying that they are all of them concerned with the question of conduct, with the question what, in the conduct of us, human beings, is good, and what is bad, what is right, and what is wrong. For when we say that a man is good, we commonly mean that he acts rightly. When we say that a drunkenness is a vice, we commonly mean that to get drunk is a wrong or a wicked action. And this discussion of human conduct is, in fact, that with which the name ethics is most intimately associated. It is so associated by derivation, and conduct is undoubtedly by far the commonest and most generally interesting object of ethical judgments. Accordingly, we find that many ethical philosophers are disposed to accept as an adequate definition of ethics the statement that deals with the question what is good or bad in human conduct. They hold that its inquiries are properly confined to conduct or to practice. They hold that the name practical philosophy covers all the matter with which it has to do. Now, without discussing the proper meaning of the word, for verbal questions are properly left to the writers of dictionaries and other persons interested in literature, philosophers, as we shall see, has no concern with them. I may say that I intend to use ethics to cover more than this, a usage for which there is, I think, quite sufficient authority. I am using it to cover an enquiry for which, at all events, there is no other word, the general enquiry into what is good. Ethics is undoubtedly concerned with the question what good conduct is, but being concerned with this, it obviously does not start at the beginning unless it is prepared to tell us what is good as well as what is conduct. For good conduct is a complex notion. All conduct is not good, for some is certainly bad and some may be indifferent. And on the other hand, other things beside conduct may be good, and if they are so, then good denotes some property that is common to them and conduct. And if we examine good conduct alone of all good things, then we shall be in danger of mistaking for this property some property which is not shared by those things. And thus we shall have made a mistake about ethics even in this limited sense, for we shall not know what good conduct really is. This is a mistake which many writers have actually made, from limiting their enquiry to conduct, and hence I shall try to avoid it by considering first what is good in general, hoping that if we can arrive at any certainty about this, it will be much easier to settle the question of good conduct, for we all know pretty well what conduct is. This, then, is our first question: what is good? And what is bad? And to the discussion of this question, or these questions, I give the name ethics, since the science must, at all events, include it. 3. But this is a question which may have many meanings. If, for example, each of us were to say, I am doing good now, or I had a good dinner yesterday, These statements would each of them be some sort of answer to our question, although perhaps a false one. So, too, when A asks B what school he ought to send his son to, B answers will certainly be an ethical judgment. And similarly all distribution of praise or blame to any personage or thing that has existed, now exists, or will exist, does give some answer to the question, what is good? In all such cases some particular thing is judged to be good or bad. The question, what, is answered by this. But this is not the sense into which a scientific ethics asks the question. Not one of all the many million answers of this kind, which must be true, can form a part of an ethical system, although that science must contain reasons and principles sufficient for deciding on the truth of all of them. There are far too many persons, things, and events in the world, past, present, or to come, for a discussion for their individual merits to be embraced in any science. Ethics, therefore, does not deal at all with facts of this nature, facts that are unique, individual, absolutely particular, facts with which such studies as history, geography, astronomy are compelled, in part at least, to deal. And for this reason it is not the business of the ethical philosopher to give personal advice or exhortation. 4. But there is another meaning which may be given to the question what is good. Books are good would be an answer to it, though an answer obviously false, for some goods are very bad indeed. And ethical judgments of this kind do indeed belong to ethics, though I shall not deal with many of them. Such is the judgment, pleasure is good, a judgment of which ethics should discuss the truth, although it is not nearly as important as the other judgment with which we shall be much occupied presently. Pleasure alone is good. It is judgments of this sort which are made in such books on ethics as contain a list of virtues, in Aristotle's Ethics, for example. But it is the judgments of precisely the same kind which form the substance of what is commonly supposed to be a study different from ethics, and one much less respectable, the study of casuistry. We may be told that casuistry differs from ethics in that it is much more detailed and particular, ethics much more general. But it is most important to notice that casuistry does not deal with anything that is absolutely particular in the only sense in which a perfectly precise line can be drawn between it and what is general. It is not particular in the sense just noticed, the sense in which this book is a particular book, and A's friends advise particular advice. Casuistry may indeed be more particular and ethics more general, but that means they differ only in degree and not in kind. And this is universally true of particular and general when used in this common but inaccurate sense. So far as ethics allows itself to give lists of virtues or even to name constituents of the ideal, it is indistinguishable from casuistry. Both alike deal with what is general in the sense in which physics and chemistry deal with what is general. Just as chemistry aims at discovering what are the properties of oxygen wherever it occurs, and not only of this or that particular specimen of oxygen, so casuistry aims at discovering what actions are good whenever they occur. In this respect ethics and casuistry alike are to be classed with such sciences as physics, chemistry, and physiology in their absolute distinctions from those of which history and geography are instances. And it is to be noted that, owing to their detailed nature, casuistical investigations are actually nearer to physics and to chemistry than are the investigations usually assigned to ethics. For just as physics cannot rest content with the discovery that light is propagated by waves of ether, but must go on to discover the particular nature of ether waves corresponding to each several color, so casuistry, not content with the general law that charity is a virtue, must attempt to discover the relative merits of every different form of charity. Casuistry forms, therefore, part of the ideal of the ethical science. Ethics cannot be complete without it. The defects of casuistry are not defects of principle. No objection can be taken to its aim and object. It has failed only because it is far too difficult a subject to be treated adequately in our present state of knowledge. The casuist has been unable to distinguish, in the cases which he treats, those elements upon which their value depends. Hence he often thinks two cases to be alike in respect of value, when in reality they are alike only in some other respect. It is to mistakes of this kind that the pernicious influence of such investigations has been due. For casuistry is the goal of ethical investigation. It cannot be safely attempted at the beginning of our studies, but only at the end. 5. But our question, what is good, may still have another meaning. We may, in the third place, mean to ask, not what thing or things are good, but how good is to be defined. This is an inquiry which belongs only to ethics, not to casuistry, and this is the inquiry which will occupy us first. It is an inquiry to which most special attention should be directed, since this question, how good is to be defined, is the most fundamental question in all ethics. That which is meant by good is, in fact, except its converse bad, the only simple object of thought which is peculiar to ethics. Its definition is, therefore, the most essential point in the definition of ethics, and moreover a mistake with regard to it entails a far larger number of erroneous ethical judgments than any other. Unless this first question be fully understood and its true answer clearly recognized, the rest of ethics is as good as useless from the point of view of systematic knowledge. True ethical judgments of the two kinds last dealt with may indeed be made by those who do not know the answer to this question as well as by those who do, and it goes without saying that the two classes of people may live equally good lives. But it is extremely unlikely that the most general ethical judgments will be equally valid in the absence of a true answer to this question. I shall presently try to shew that the gravest errors have been largely due to beliefs in a false answer, and in any case it is impossible that, till the answer to this question be known, any one should know what is the evidence for any ethical judgment whatsoever. But the main object of ethics, as a systematic science, is to give correct reasons for thinking that this is or that is good, and unless this question be answered, such reasons cannot be given. Even therefore, apart from the fact that a false answer leads to false conclusions, the present inquiry is a most necessary and important part of the science of ethics. 6. What then is good? How is good to be defined? Now it may be thought that this is a verbal question. A definition does indeed often mean the expressing of one word's meaning in other words. But this is not the sort of definition I am asking for. Such a definition can never be of ultimate importance to any study except lexicography. If I wanted that kind of definition, I should have to consider in the first place how people generally use the word good. But my business is not with its proper usage, as established by custom. I should indeed be foolish if I tried to use it for something which it did not usually denote. If, for instance, I were to announce that whenever I used the word good, I must be understood to be thinking of that object which is usually denoted by the word table. I shall therefore use the word in the sense in which I think it is ordinarily used, but at the same time I am not anxious to discuss whether I am right in thinking it is so used. My business is solely with that object or idea which I hold, rightly or wrongly, that the word is generally used to stand for. What I want to discover is the nature of that object or idea, and about this I am extremely anxious to arrive at an agreement. But if we understand the question in this sense, my answer to it may seem a very disappointing one. If I am asked, what is good? My answer is that good is good, and that is the end of the matter. Or if I am asked, how is good to be defined? My answer is that it cannot be defined, and that is all I have to say about it. But disappointing as these answers may appear, they are of the very last importance. To readers who are familiar with philosophic terminology, I can express their importance by saying that they amount to this: that propositions about the good are all of them synthetic and never analytic, and that is plainly no trivial matter. And the same thing may be expressed more popularly by saying that, if I am right, then nobody can foist upon us such an axiom as that pleasure is the only good, or that the good is the desired, on the pretense that this is the very meaning of the word. 7. Let us then consider this position. My point is that good is a simple notion, just as yellow is a simple notion, that